Hello, I am Rowan Coleman, writing as Bella Ellis, and I'm here at Brontë Parsonage Museum today to read you an extract from my book, The Vanished Bride. So the sisters have just discovered that there's been a murder in a nearby village called Arrington, and it's a house where their friend is working as a governess, so they're making a plan of action to decide what to do next. Reaching for a pen, Charlotte hesitated and then felt a little thrill as she galvanised an alternative plan of action. No, I shall do better than write. I shall visit first thing tomorrow morning. I shall accompany you, Emily said. I did always care for dear Martha French so. Matilda, dear, Charlotte said. Chester Grange is but 2 hours' walk across Penistone Moor. Anyone who may wish to accompany me is most welcome, as long as that person is not coming along simply to relish violence. Emily looked longingly out of the window, where the rain came down so heavily that it shrouded the town beyond in a veil of tears, and even though somewhere above the thick clouds the summer raged on, it was almost impossible to believe it. I'm done with being kept prisoner by the rain, and I am done with the inside of this house. Set me free to have my feet soaked through and frozen. Charlotte turned to Anne, who sat with her hands folded neatly in her lap, looking for all the world as meek and as mild as any maid has ever been, which is exactly how those who did not know her perceived her to be. She wore her mildness like a kind of disguise, Charlotte often thought, hiding a warrior within. Well, I can't very well let you both wander about alone, Anne said. I feel I am duty-bound to keep you both respectable. And I shall accompany you too, Branwell said with largesse. You will need protecting from the crazed knife man, after all. Well, brother dear, Anne said, a little resentfully, I fear I am rather uncertain as to who would be protecting whom if you were to come with us. As it is, we are quite capable of going alone. Are you still angry with me, Anne? Branwell asked, as if it had been 1,000 years since he made Anne's position as governess at Thorpe Green untenable. The utter humiliation of the Mrs. Robinson business was almost more than any of the Brontes could bear, especially Papa. The thought of Branwell involving himself with his employer's wife in proceedings that were bad beyond expression quite turned her stomach. And of course, the moment Branwell was dismissed under such a thundercloud of scandal, blameless Anne had to resign her position. The indignity was still fresh in her mind, it seemed. Certainly Anne was entitled to at least a little more angst than the loss of her income, and not to mention the infamy that had been brought upon the family. And yet the moment she saw Branwell's expression of remorse and dejection, Charlotte could tell that Anne regretted her comments. Will you always hate me simply for falling in love? He cried. Please, I beg you, help me move as far away from what has crushed my heart as I may, and let me accompany you on your expeditions as I used to. He looked at each of his sisters in turn. May I come? Yes, Emily said immediately. I think not, Charlotte added at once. Emily glowered at her, and Charlotte could understand her disapproval. Recently, Branwell's weakness to the draw of the Black Bull and frankly all of Haworth's drinking establishments had deepened considerably, and Emily thought anything that might keep Branwell away from hard liquor for a few hours might surely be good for him. It was a fair point, but Charlotte still hesitated. Why not? Emily protested, taking Branwell's hand. Despite Anne's assertion, we are but 3 defenceless women embarking on a considerable walk without a man to protect us after all. As if that has ever concerned you for one moment in your entire life, Emily, Charlotte laughed, softening her voice as she turned to Branwell. Dear brother, not this time. This time your presence, though it would be welcome, would mark our visit out of the ordinary, and we do not wish to be noticed. It has always been the way of the world that it will pay attention to a man as fine as you, but we 3 countrywomen, they will not notice us. And on this occasion it will be to our advantage. Perhaps we 3 may even be able to discern the truth of what happened to Elizabeth Chester. Charlotte avoided Anne's gaze, knowing that her little sister was appraising her at that very moment, trying to determine how much her planned visit to Matilda French was out of concern and how much was down to a desperate need for distraction. In any event, Charlotte determined, one couldn't not go to visit a friend at such an unfortunate time just because it might also be rather fascinating. Well then, Branwell sighed, collapsing onto the sofa, hooking one of his long legs over the arm, I will just have to find another way to amuse myself while you were gone. Perhaps the Black Bull. Perhaps church, Charlotte suggested. Perhaps the Black Bull is my church, Branwell chuckled as Charlotte's eyes widened in horror. Is it truly terrible, Anne said gravely in a bid to distract her sister, that I am a little thrilled to think of us three invisible lady detectives seeking out the truth. I believe we could be quite the only such creatures in all existence. Detectors? Charlotte asked her. What a curious phrase. Why yes, from the article in the Times I was telling you about. Detectors. That, my dear sisters, is what we shall be. There was much more talk that night, stories and laughter that echoed on even after the long case clock on the stairs had struck midnight. And not one of the siblings noticed, as they talked and wrote and laughed, how the darkness crowded all around their bright little house, threatening to blot it out.